You're listening to Tackling the Taboo, a journey of self-discovery through Black love. We're kicking off our 2019-2020 season, and the theme is Storyboard Convention. The title of this episode is The Blackness We Wear. Like with a storyboard, this season will take a meta-analytical lens in mapping out how our varying narratives surrounding Black identity intersect, flow into one another, and parallel with our state of mental health.
Hi, this is Dr. J.
Hi, this is DJ Homochrysalis.
And under our voices is Get It Right, the title track to the album, sung by Aretha Franklin, produced by Luther Vandross and Marcus Miller. I'm DJ Dupsie. Let's dive on into our storyboard convention. Perfect. All right. So, we have our topics here that we talked about last time, and feel free to scroll or, on the mouse pad. So, starting with number one, should we list them all, then go back and talk about them? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got looking at things from a mental health lens, right? Start to recognize how other things are based in how we think about ourselves, like how the other topics. So I think this point was like how mental health bleeds into and touches the other topics, right? And being better in tune with what love and success is, and touching on how self-hatred can be a reflection of not feeling a sense of community. Or community responsibility, right? People wanting to feel like people want to feel like they are getting something out of it, right? Talking about politics, abuse, trauma, depression. Again, that would link back to, mental health, right? Yeah, okay. Being meta-analytical about our circumstances, right? So taking time just to what's going on, like with us, as we talk about these things and like things that may come up, like as we're, talking. Looping in spirituality, cooperative economics, Blackness in relation to indigeneity, spell check, and how we start to reap the benefits of an economy that we built. Divest, refusal, economic predation. Right? Consumption, digital consumption, Blackness and hygiene, and how that can link to environmental toxicity and body toxicity. Professional and career development, the stigmatizing of Blackness in what's considered professional, quote unquote, sectors. American patriotism, right? What does that look like if you're Black or in the diaspora?
That's
right?
a loaded term.
Right. Right. The ancestors, period. Right. Number 9 is just the ancestors, period. Right. The foundations of human civilization, how, us, as Black Africans, folks descended from that are, the foundations of human civilization. Blackness in education. How we react to the realization of this knowledge. I think that also fits with like the meta-analytical stuff that we talked about up here. Reparations and crunching some numbers, and then thinking about concepts of human and how our bodies are connected with natural elements and the stars and the celestial and all that kind of stuff. So given those topics, right, anything stand out to you initially in terms of like, ooh, like I'm interested in that? Or I think other people would want to hear us talk about that.
Again,
go
ahead.
I love mental health. I think it's always like relevant to everything. I think the mind is very powerful, and it can, we can vision, and we can also use, circumstances to like feel trapped, and that links in with spirituality. That links in with like daily behavior and daily practice of self-care. That I think it links in with community responsibility, which got brought up earlier. So for me, I don't know, it just it's a lens that you can pretty much talk about everything.
Right.
So I'd be down to start with mental health.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would like to connect, mental health and self-love. So if you have self-love, that is reflective of one's mental health and everything else. From love springs every other encounter that we have, how we interact with others, the world, the environment. It will be of a positive note. If we're coming from a spirit of self-hatred in any form, regardless of our best intentions, that self-hatred is going to be a part of it. And that I think for us as a community, self-hatred is so endemic of how we have been treated the last 400 years that that's until we learn to start healing that, we're always going to have kind of this push-pull, catch us best we can, where it's 2 steps forward and 2 steps back kind of thing. And so we have to find a way to love ourselves literally in order to heal both our mental health, our physical health, our environmental health, our economic health. Everything else springs from that.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think, and given also then who we're connected with currently, who's, featuring us on their platform, right? The Confess Project, is a nonprofit organization that's all about being an advocate for mental health resources for particularly for African American men and boys, but for everyone, right? So it's not like that we don't broaden the conversation, right? And thinking about the services that they provide, but. Yeah, I mean, that's great that we just, kind of naturally gravitated toward this topic. And then that's also the topic subject matter of, this organization that is, very graciously, featuring us on their website. Right. And so, because I agree. I think all the other topics like surrounding like what we consume, physically, digitally, ideas of professionalism, ideas of like, hygiene and like all this other stuff, right? I think that also, that does connect back to, like you were saying, our perceptions of ourselves and do we love ourselves and, So I guess as an example, right, let's just pick like a specific subtopic, I guess. And like give the listeners like kind of an example of like how, I guess if we use that kind of like umbrella, that framework for our 2019-2020 season, that we're going to approach this through the mental health, like kind of self-love lens of it. Let's see, for example, what's kind of maybe an easy one? Maybe professional career development, maybe? Like just an example of like how like ideas of mental health and self-love could show up or are challenged in our current state of like professional and career development. That's just like a short example, right? Certainly the idea of like, just starting with on the surface, literally, professional appearance, right? And what's considered that, right? And how sometimes barriers to that self-love is when the very hair growing out of my head isn't considered quote unquote professional. Yeah. Right. And what does that do? What does that do to my image of self-love? Right. And if I want to be this professional, but then I also want to be Black, where do we have a happy medium then?
They contradict. Yeah.
Yeah. Oftentimes, like falling into what they call like respectability politics really comes at the expense of affirming one's culture, right? That's right. And Black culture particularly. So a lot of professional career development related goals. Like I just was reading about that. It was in Chicago. There's like a nonprofit that was like cutting off all of these inner city kids' locks off just to get them more prepared for, like I guess it was like social mobility and economic advancement.
Wow.
And it's like so there's these ways in which like even I think the lady was well intended. She was like, I don't want to see kids end up in jail. And there's statistics that say if you look a certain way, you're gonna fall in, and it's just I mean, how do you reconcile with self-care and self-love, looking a certain way, and also having to conform a look to fit what is like unpoliceable or what is
what would we call it? The intersectionality of self-love is somehow not always, but oftentimes at odds with acceptance, social acceptance. So, for us as Black folk to love ourselves and to express love of our look, of our hair, of our skin, of our heritage, generally means we will run into resistance of social acceptance on the job, in school, in society.
In relationships.
Right, exactly. So like what you were talking about, it was last year, but I remember there was a wrestler who had a match, and there was the coach who went over and cut off his locks. You can't participate in the wrestling match until your hair conforms to. It was a wrestling match
in front of everybody.
And
this wasn't voluntary or like, come to our service to do this. This was like impromptu on the spot in front of the whole school.
Right.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
And just cut off his hair.
And just cut it off. I mean,
traumatizing.
It was like rape. Really.
Pretty much, it's traumatizing.
And it was, basically it was, either you let me do this or you don't get to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
And so, at least here in California, where was the law that was passed that, they can't discriminate because of how your hair looks now. But
they still had to pass a law.
They still had to pass a law to do that.
Because the default is the way we wake up is just not professional.
Right.
Right.
And there's just so many conversations of like, I don't know, mom saying like, oh, well, just, get your foot through the door and then you can be yourself, right? So, conform to, shave your head, do this, get it, get your hair permed, whatever, to get your foot through the door. And then from there, the authenticity might be able to come through. And it's frustrating that that's still sometimes often the case, kind of infiltrating to then, be authentic, which is just,
Right.
But even then, it's, it's kind of a dance. Because once you get in there, okay, well, maybe I need to wait until my 6-month probation is over. Okay, then I have a little more solid footing. But even then, you have to gauge, because by the time you've gotten through your 6 months, there may be other battles that seem bigger than whether or not you're wearing locks or your dashiki, and you're having to, literally having to decide, like what we were talking about earlier. What does this institution mean? What are the values of this institution? What if your values conflict with the need to make money, and that is becoming the primary value? Okay, so then how I look is now going to have to likely be submerged in, I've got to fight this other battle because that's why I was hired. And so it's always a dance.
Right.
Having to choose they're all priorities, but what is the primary priority today?
Right. And where privilege comes in is that if you're a person that doesn't have to think about these things and split their mind in these dual, triple ways and layers, right? Like, that's the privilege, right? Like, that's the privilege of, like, the other side of that is that, like, if all this sounds like, alien or foreign, like, I've never had to do this or think about this, that's probably because you've been sitting in a place of privilege where, like, just being yourself isn't seen as unprofessional or non-conforming or non-productive or won't make money or whatever the case is, right? That somehow our purpose has to be connected back to how much money is going in somebody's pocket.
Tell me who rock, who sell out in the stores. You tell me who flop, who cop the blue drop, who jewels got blocks, who's mostly Dolce down to the blue top. The same old pimp, mace, ain't nothing changed but my limp. Can't stop till I see my name on the blimp. Guarantee me and shells pull a level up. You don't believe in Harlem World? Double up. We don't play around, it's a bet, lay it down. Didn't know me 91, bet they know me now. I'm the young Harlem with the Goldie sound. Can't no PhD, hold me down, cooler. School me to the game, now I know my duty. Stay humble, stay low, blow like Hootie. True pimp, spin no dough on the booty. And then yell, there go Mace, there go your cutie.
Mo Money, Mo Problems by Notorious B.I.G., the late Notorious B.I.G., featuring Maze and Puff Daddy, off the album Life After Death. You're listening to Tackling the Taboo, Storyboard Convention, the Blackness We Wear. So how does self-love and how do we love ourselves, and like how do we I don't want to say fight the battle, because it's that, but it's not just all fighting battles all the time. It's like at some point you have to regroup and recuperate. So like how do we, what does that therapy look like in this particular context? But
it's not easy. I guess I can only talk about myself. Is it did come from studying, from research, learning about my culture, learning about myself, what really felt comfortable. And as I grew older, it isn't that my values changed, but how I prioritized my values changed. And I recognized that if I wanted to be once I really valued this look being authentic, how do I create for myself a job that will allow me to be more authentic in the moment? And I don't know if that will work for other people, but it was a process of years to go from having been raised that, the perm and everything was quote unquote natural, because I was taught to conform. This is what you got to do to get in. And like you said, then you can fight the battle, to where it mattered that I was letting the universe know that this is what I wanted on a permanent basis. And so it was like having to let go of, some of those privileges and stepping out on faith. Mm-hmm. It was stepping out on faith, and God helped me create a space where I can be more authentically me all the time, where I can actually make a living doing what I do on a volunteer basis, which is
doing
what So it was like how it was trying to bring in more advocacy for the community in my job. So having to advocate on my job to be able to advocate, to make advocacy a part of my job for the community, and doing then volunteer work after that. And so just letting the universe know, I want to be able to do this full time. If there's ever that thing, you hear, you want to do a job you want to have a job that you would actually do for free. It was reaching the point to step out on faith. God, help me create this. I need you to show me the way. And it was trusting that the universe would provide until I got here. And so now, I'm being paid to advocate for my community. Does that mean that there aren't still challenges left? I'm running across new challenges
every day,
all the time. Yeah. So it doesn't stop. It's once you step out on faith and then you get where you want to be, then it's okay. I need to increase more faith, and so it's recognizing, this is the way it is. And just being grateful for each positive step that's made. What do you guys do?
For me, I'm just a few years, still technically less than a decade out of grad school, and so for me it was day one, like on the job search, right? Like I showed up on my interviews, with a shirt and tie underneath my dashiki. I showed up with a shirt and tie underneath my dashiki, and I think that's like kind of a perfect image of how I just like broke into my profession, right? Is that like I want wherever I'm going to be working, whatever environment, institution I'm going to be working for, I want to make it very clear this is who you're getting up front. Right. And of course, my family was just like, oh, my God, you're never going to find a job. And I did. Fortunately, I guess, not to stereotype California, but I'm like, I guess the first place that hired me was in California. That just is what it is. But ever since then, right? It's and sometimes I have gone back, like in terms of like interviews and like just going back to like the full suit or whatever. But like at this point, like I decided for myself that like moving forward here on out, like no more suits and ties. And why? Because of where I know that comes from, right? And just this idea of like, working and putting energy into your community, like like how you were saying, if you could do a job that you would do for free, right? Like get a job where you can just like, I'm just doing me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm supporting myself like that. That's kind of the very thing that I talk about when people hear me talk about the squirrels and the rabbits and the deer and the turkeys, right? It's like they go out every day and they do them, right? And the energy that they put forth every day goes directly back into their squirrel community or their turkey community, right? The way that capitalism has been set up and the way the constructs of professionalism that have been set up in a white capitalist system is the complete opposite, right? That I have to go and work and put all my energy into somebody else's community, right? Into somebody else's pocket. Meanwhile, I can't feed myself. I'm living out of my car. I don't know where my next meal is coming from. I don't know where I'm going to lay my head down tonight. And I still got to pay tuition. I still got classes I'm going to. I still, got all this stuff going on. And so, for me, it has been like, if really challenging things in a way that like, if we really do have this mission as an institution, right? If we're really supposed to be, holding these ideals of diversity and social justice and all this kind of stuff, then for me, it's been just a constant, like really challenging the day-to-day practice, right? Like, how do we construct productivity? How do we construct time? And how do these constructs of productivity and time, how have they impacted folks that, don't operate under that mindset, right? That, a lot of indigenous cultures, right, didn't operate on this like on time timetable, linear, progressive, make money, time is money kind of thing, right? Like that was ushered onto us. That mindset was forced onto a lot of us, right? And so, this idea of, for me, capitalist economics in a not-for-profit institute, quote unquote, institution of higher learning, I'm like that, for me, that doesn't make sense. And so for me, wherever I've been, it's just been that realizing that if this is what we say we're going to be about, we just need to be transparent about what we're going to be about and name that. If we're really not about social justice, or if we're only about it in this context, then we just need to name it and be transparent that we only have social justice up until this point because this is a business and we need to make money. Just be transparent about that, right? But we can't do this whole like, oh no, social justice, we want to do, but then at the same time, it's like, the only way we can perform our jobs and do our work are through these white capitalist systems of doing work and constructing work. So, it's just, again, that tension, right? That push-pull where it's like, wait a minute, like something on an ancestral level just doesn't feel right. Right. And so, like, again, it's like the squirrels. Like, why would a squirrel go and forage acorns and then go put them in a bird's nest? Yeah. It forages for acorns and it goes and puts them back in its own nest, right? And every squirrel that goes out and does the work to find its own acorns takes every one of them back to its own nest, right? And so, and they share with each other, right? It's part of that squirrel community, but like, and then the predators, right? Like the eagles don't police them, right? The eagles don't come down and say, oh no, you can't forage like that. Like you have to do it within this time, and you have to show up to the tree at 9. Come and get them. And come and get them, and come collect my tax, whatever percent. Like these are my acorns for me because it's my tax or whatever, right? Like the eagles don't do that, right? And so where we get our systems of commerce from, there are theories of where they're coming from, but like when you think about like, has it always been this way, and does it always need to be this way? For me, the answer is no, right? But I think people get really scared about like, okay, like if we don't operate this way, then what do we do, right? And it's just stepping out on that faith, right? Stepping out on faith that there have been ways of living life that have not been like this, and there are ways of living life, people living currently in this world that don't live like we do. And so, but we've been taught, we've been told in our American culture that we are the best, America number one, America, all this kind of stuff. And so a lot of that is unlearning. For me, it was unlearning, actively unlearning. Like, no, America is not this. It is really this. And so, and taking that with me into my work every day, to say that like this is how now this idea of culture impacts us, right, and stresses us out and makes us, depressed and anxious and on the edge all the time. Not just students, but us as staff and faculty, right? If you're not at the upper echelon, if you're not the director or the lead, faculty member, dean of your department, like you're spinning your wheels and you're like stretching yourself out and you're, on all kinds of edges, right? And why? What for? Thank you for listening to Tackling the Taboo, Storyboard Convention, The Blackness We Wear. Under my voice is I Decided by Solange Knowles from the album Soul Angel and the Hadley Street Dreams. Look out for our next episode, Storyboard Convention, Find the Cheese. Here's a preview.
Really, the capitalistic system, that's why our capitalistic system here in America is so much harsher than other capitalistic societies around the world. This country held on to slavery longer than anybody else.
It's still holding on to it.
Right. And you're right. We're now into serfdom, but it's still not... it's not based on the idea of collectively working together and supporting one another.
That was a preview of our next episode, Storyboard Convention, Find the Cheese. Once again, I'm DJ Dupsie, and thank you for listening to Tackling the Taboo, a journey of self-discovery through Black love.